Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling the absolute, ultimate, universal dilemma for pretty much any dedicated lifter or physique athlete out there. How in the world do you get shredded while keeping all that muscle you've worked so incredibly hard to build? Honestly, it's a super delicate balancing act. So to figure it out, we're going to unpack a really comprehensive narrative review that was recently published in the journal Nutrients. This review zeroes in specifically on resistance-trained athletes, and it breaks down the exact science of achieving a truly optimal fat loss phase. So, can you actually lose fat without losing your gains? Well, the short answer is yes, absolutely, but it requires some real precision. You see, the second you enter a hypocaloric diet, meaning, you're eating fewer calories than you burn, you are inherently signaling your body to break down tissue for energy. And here's the kicker. Your body doesn't just look at fat. It will happily target your hard-earned muscle. But don't stress. The researchers in this review have actually provided us with a literal science-backed survival guide to solve this exact problem and protect your lean mass. Here's our ultimate fat loss blueprint. We're going to start by setting the weight loss sweet spot, then move into the exact macronutrient shield you need, dial in your biological clock with nutrient timing, and finally, finish up with proven supplements. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The weight loss sweet spot, setting the pace. 0.5 to 1.0%. That right there is your absolutely ideal weekly body weight loss target. So if you weigh 200 pounds, that means losing about 1 to 2 pounds a week. Now you might be wondering, why not just drop the weight faster? Well, the source data is crystal clear on this. Anything more aggressive than that severely risks eating away at your muscle mass. In fact, case studies mentioned in the review showed that when athletes pushed for a 1% weight loss per week or more, a massive 42.8% of the total weight they lost was actually fat-free mass. Basically, the leaner you get, the more conservative your deficit needs to be. But what's really fascinating is why weight loss eventually just stalls out, right? It's all because of a concept called metabolic adaptation. When you drop your calories, your body actually fights back to defend its energy stores. It becomes incredibly efficient, it slows down your resting metabolic rate, messes with your hunger hormones, and subconsciously reduces your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. Basically, you just start fidgeting less, sitting more, and even blinking slower without even realizing it. Because of this sneaky adaptation, a 500-calorie deficit on day 1 is not going to yield that same fat loss on day 60. Now, if you push that caloric deficit way too far, you crash straight into low energy availability, or LEA. The research shows a literal danger zone occurs when your energy availability drops below 25 to 30 kilocalories per kilogram of fat-free mass. For women, dropping below this threshold completely disrupts sex hormones, menstrual regularity, and thyroid function. And for men, dipping below that 25 kilocalorie mark triggers severe hormonal alterations, psychological issues, and totally tanks your testosterone. You simply do not want to live in this zone. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can actually fight back against that metabolic adaptation. The researchers highlighted a super smart strategy comparing standard linear dieting against intermittent caloric restriction. Specifically, they looked at the Matador study, which used a diet break format. So instead of starving continuously, subjects dieted for 2 weeks, then ate at full maintenance calories for 2 weeks, and just repeated that cycle. The result? They lost more fat and experienced a significantly smaller drop in their resting metabolic rate compared to the continuous dieters. While diet breaks do obviously extend the total time of your cut, they act as this amazing physiological reset button to protect your metabolism. All right, moving to Section 2, Carbs, Fats, and Protecting Muscle, the Macronutrient Shield. Okay, now that we have total calories locked in, we really need to distribute them effectively. Here is a definitive, seriously screenshot-worthy macronutrient reference guide straight from the literature. To maximize fat-free mass retention, protein has got to be high. We're talking 2.2 to 3.0 grams per kilogram of body weight. Carbohydrates should sit right between 2 and 5 grams per kilogram to fuel your training. And fats need to be between 0.5 and 1.0 grams per kilogram to keep those anabolic hormones functioning. Let's actually break down exactly why these specific numbers matter so much. Think of your muscle tissue like a massive storage reservoir of amino acids. During a caloric deficit, your body is desperately searching for energy precursors to keep you going. If you aren't eating enough protein, your body will literally break open that muscle reservoir, cannibalizing your hard-earned tissue to use for oxidative energy. But by keeping your protein intake aggressively high, pushing up to that 3.0 grams per kilogram mark, you flood your system with dietary amino acids, completely shielding your muscle tissue from being catabolized. Next up, let's talk carbs. You'll often hear gym bros confidently claim you can lift perfectly fine on a zero-carb, ketogenic diet. Well, the science says otherwise. While it's true that severe carb restriction might preserve your pure one-rep max strength, it completely compromises your power and work capacity. The science shows us there's a critical muscle glycogen threshold right at 70 millimoles per kilogram. Dipping below this level literally physically impairs calcium release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum inside your muscle fibers. The end result? Your maximum power drops, your performance suffers, and your overall training quality seriously degrades.
Then we have what I like to call the fat floor. A really common myth out there is that you should drop dietary fats to absolute zero to get shredded as fast as possible. Guys, this is disastrous for an athlete. The review explicitly highlights that dropping fats below 20% of your total daily intake, or below 0.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, can severely and negatively impact your testosterone levels. You absolutely must hit this fat floor to maintain the essential anabolic hormones required to keep your muscle mass totally intact during a cut.
Section 3. Nutrient timing and frequency. Optimizing the biological clock. All right, here are your definitive daily protein distribution rules, because it's not just about hitting your daily total, it's entirely about how you spread it out. You're going to want to consume 3 to 6 meals per day. Each meal must contain 0.40 to 0.55 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight. You also need to ensure you're getting high biological value sources, so you secure at least 2.5 grams of the amino acid leucine per meal to actually trigger growth. And finally, make sure one of those meals is 2 to 3 hours before you train and another is 2 to 3 hours after you train.
Now you might be thinking, why not just eat protein every single hour to stay anabolic all day? Well, because of a super fascinating mechanism called the muscle full effect. Basically, once you eat a high-protein meal, muscle protein synthesis spikes. But after about 2 hours, that synthesis drops right back to baseline, even if amino acids are still floating around high in your blood. It is exactly like resetting a biological circuit breaker. It trips, and it requires a full 2 to 3 hour refractory period to reset before it can be stimulated again. Therefore, eating 8 tiny meals a day is actually biologically useless for muscle growth. Just stick to the 3 to 6 meals appropriately spaced out.
And what about slamming a protein shake right before bed? Pre-sleep protein is incredibly popular, but we kind of need to dispel a slight myth here. Is it effective? Absolutely. It for sure boosts overnight muscle protein synthesis. But the research clearly points out that there's no magical nighttime anabolic window. The primary reason pre-sleep protein works so well in all these studies is simply because it helps athletes successfully hit their massive 2.2 to 3.0 gram per kilogram daily targets. If you match that exact same total protein intake at other times of the day, the long-term results would be virtually identical.
Section 4. Proven supplements that work, moving the needle. First up is the absolute gold standard, creatine monohydrate. Taking 0.08 to 0.10 grams per kilogram of body weight per day for maintenance does something genuinely incredible. It systematically increases your intramuscular phosphocreatine levels by 20 to 40%. This directly fuels your phosphagen energy system, which is exclusively responsible for high-intensity, explosive activities lasting up to 10 seconds. More phosphocreatine means higher quality sets, more reps, and a far greater ability to retain your strength while dieting down.
Next up is caffeine. To actually improve your performance in the gym, the recommended fully research-backed dose is 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, taken about 30 to 60 minutes prior to exercise. So, the crucial point is this: the literature shows caffeine is particularly effective at impacting your upper body maximum strength and power. And just as importantly, during a grueling fat loss phase when you're totally dragging, it acts as a powerful tool to combat diet-induced fatigue so you can keep that training intensity high. Finally, let's look at the humble multivitamin mineral, or MVM. You might think your diet is completely perfect, but the research cited in this review analyzed popular diet programs and found that, on average, they missed 56% of the recommended daily intakes for essential micronutrients. When you are on a strict caloric deficit, you simply lack the total food volume and the dietary diversity to hit all your micronutrient needs. Taking a well-dosed MVM acts as a pretty critical nutritional safety net to keep all your bodily systems functioning optimally. Which brings us to the end of our blueprint, leaving us with one really crucial question. Is your pursuit of extreme leanness sacrificing your long-term performance? Look, dieting down doesn't mean you have to lose the muscle you literally bled for. By setting a conservative caloric deficit, rigorously hitting your macronutrient thresholds, timing your protein intake to actually respect your physiology, and utilizing proven supplements, you can successfully navigate your fat loss phase. Take these evidence-based numbers to completely optimize your next cut. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.